Okay, we will now begin the question and answer segment. You may form a single line behind each microphone in either aisle. Please limit yourself to one question with no follow-ups. Also, please remember to take a moment and fill out an assessment form located underneath your chairs. These forms can help us continue to bring quality events to the university. They can be turned in as you leave the event tonight. And now we will take the first question.
Oh, by the way, one tiny thing. I wanted to mention that in the books, my book is available in the back. So, yeah, just make sure to mention that. Most of the stuff I was showing you was examples and bits and pieces from the book. Just so. Anybody have questions? You guys are shy. Okay.
Hey, DJ Spooky. I was wondering if you could show us some of your DJing skills.
Yeah. Let's see. Well, yeah, in a little bit. But yeah, today we're going to just like talk about ideas and theory and music and stuff, you know. But yeah, I DJ all the time, so this is a little more unique. But thank you for the question. You know, maybe we can get all the professors breakdowns or something. You know.
Hello, thank you very much for that presentation. It's wonderful. I was wondering, a friend of mine actually visited Antarctica, and the most striking thing to him was the experience of silence down there. And I was wondering if you had a similar experience, and also what role silence plays in your own work.
That's a great question. I mean, when you think about silence, we as human beings are always, we can't edit out anything. You're always absorbed and immersed in the environment around you. And I think what happens with electronic music is that the creator tends to filter the world around them, and that always goes into their material. Going to Antarctica was, you know, probably one of the heaviest things for me. It was just, like you were saying, the silence and the distance. Werner Herzog was shooting his film when I was there as well. So there was a whole sense of, I think, trying to document this and give it a sense of human scale. There's a lot of photographs on my website about that project, and I'll just bring that up really quick to give you an idea. And that's a symphony that's going to be touring for a while. The whole notion for me right now is to say, how do we think about environmental issues in a way that's compelling and that creates something that people can relate to and just try and get into an emotional relationship with the environment. So I did a series of graphic design prints. They were a manifesto for People's Republic of Antarctica. And I always do my artwork for all my projects. So I make posters, stickers, graphic design. And the idea was to kind of not only looking at music and graphic design, but how early hip-hop, a lot of people were always rhyming about the street. But what would happen if you take people from the street and put them someplace else? So the silence for me is saying, all right, it can be infinite. It doesn't have to just be one formula, one style. And for that matter, you know, so graphics always, to me, speak to that. But yeah, it was a very beautiful place, and it's all melting. So don't go, but just think about it. Yeah, thank you for the question. Or
Ladies first.
I am working on a dissertation on James Joyce and the idea of remixing and re-rendering media, and I'm having to deal with this question, so I wanted to put it to you. What are your thoughts on what is gained versus what is lost when a work is taken out of its original context and put into a new context?
Okay, yeah, I sampled James Joyce, actually. I got a really rare record of him reading from Finnegan's Wake. The remix is in the CD that goes with the back of my book, actually. So I'm very interested in appropriation of other authors and looking at people like Jack Kerouac, people like William S. Burroughs, Mallarmé, Apollinaire, and the cut-up techniques that... if you look at James Joyce, one could argue that he didn't necessarily do physical cut-ups, although he did sometimes. But when it was happening, his language was this kind of stream of consciousness almost that was tightly wound and edited together. So I look at him as a precedent for this idea of people like Kool Keith, aka Dr. Octagon. I look at him as a kind of a precedent for new ways of condensing a tremendous amount of information into small wordplay. You know, I'd say him, Samuel Beckett, and Proust. are all three writers that really engage that in very radically different strategies. But if you think about James Joyce, his books are like 500 pages long, just like you're in his world when you're reading it. And that's something that I think our modern life right now is very fragmented, very saturated, and above all, we're being bombarded and pulled in several directions simultaneously, which is how his writing feels. So I think the way we live now mirrors his style of writing. I'm a big fan, but yeah, it's that's one of those things where you have to really sit and read his stuff. It's like medicine, you gotta. It's not fun, kind of stuff. I wish maybe you could make James Joyce more fun. That's a project. But all right, so next one.
I remixed the remix. It was back to normal. That's a Mitch Hedberg.
Wait, I'm not sure I understand.
I remixed the remix. It was back to normal. It's Mitch Hedberg. He's dead now. But
Okay.
my question is, thanks for coming. Also, appreciate it. Do you see, like, a lot of people say things come full circle, but I see it more as spiraling. Do you see anything like that related to distribution of music? And do you see a shift going back to the days of the mixtape, but mixtapes as in CDs, as hard copy format, as people selling mixtapes to make money?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, people very rarely use cassettes anymore, but the metaphor of the mixtape, it's still there, the metaphor. And just for the audience that's out there, the mixtape is essentially a curated bootleg. You've taken all these very good songs, rare songs, vocals, shout-outs, acapellas, and put them all in one place, and that's what gives it value. So in, again, theoretical terms, that's what you call cultural capital. It's something that builds value where essentially you're giving away and or selling, but there's still, say for example in New York, if you go down to Canal Street, that's where all the bootlegs, the best bootleg mixtapes are. And a lot of the most well-known MCs will give their voice away to be on mixtapes for shout-outs, stuff like that. Like 50 Cent and Eminem got started by doing mixtape shout-outs and battles. So by giving away for free a shout-out or just participating in mixes, that built their cultural capital. And I think that's actually the best place for culture right now is in these kinds of free spaces, free mixes. But people are going to be making a living off of anything they can right now. The economy's messed up. A lot of jobs have gone, and people are trying to translate to a new 21st century economy. So you're going to be seeing a lot of creative people experimenting with new things. And I'm sure probably a lot of people out there have seen the film The Social Network. Mixtapes are the social network of the street. It's like people passing mixes around, exchanging, creating new forms and styles. That's the social network of the urban scene.
Specifically hard copy, coming back to hard copy, do you think that's going to become more valuable?
Well, I think everything's going to be anything that can be digital will be. And I always chuckle over this one, but I always think that the top-selling album of all time, forget the Beatles or Elvis or even Bob Marley, the top-selling album of all time is a blank CD, because people want to make their own, selections. And that playlist mentality doesn't require physical goods anymore. It doesn't require a CD, it doesn't require anything. It's just selection in the most abstract form. Whether you're online, whether you're web crowd surfing, or whether you're twittering, text messaging, that selection process becomes taste. And taste is the most rare thing right now, because everybody can kind of have tracks and 10,000 songs in their iPod, but you know what? Are those 10,000 songs going to be good? And being able to curate and select the best moments and put it together, that's the art.
Well, nobody steal my idea, but I'm starting to make mixtapes, and I sell the tapes and the cassette players.
Okay. Thank you for that.
Hi, DJ Spooky. I'm a DJ, and one of my close friends is a guitarist, and we have this running argument, especially about the Grey Album, because he says the Beatles perfect and should not be tainted or altered in any way. And so I was just wondering, with the way that technology and music is evolving, and like your application, how things are becoming more compacted, do you feel like there are negative things or bad things coming out of the alteration or this movement? I mean, there are obviously lots of positive things, but I was just wondering if you felt like there were negative effects as well.
Yeah, I mean, sampling is about irreverence, but it's also at the same time it's ancestor worship. It's about saying that you have a community of memory, because if millions of people know the Beatles album, why do millions of people want to remember something the same way? So why not play, and share, try something different and tear it up, rebuild it. I'm always fascinated with how people become conservative about history. And history is always being changed. People always look at movements and, and ideas from different eras with different eyes, So you're always going to say this sound or this style could be this or that. That's okay. In these days you call it postmodernism or something, where you're looking at how history and sound and memory can be transformed and re-edited. I'll play you an amusing clip, which probably is, again, at this point, kind of old school, but it's a nice flourish for this kind of debate you're talking about. Hold on one second. And I'm always intrigued with how people say that there's only one way to view something, and then you realize, wait a second, why? It just doesn't have to be that way. And 1 second. Got lots of video here. Okay, let's go. But considering we're in Austin, let me just show you a funny little video clip. And this is short, so I'm just going to keep it funny. Hold on 1 second. What's this? Okay. Oops, wait a second. Let's get Bush his time. Oops. Wow. Okay. Hold on, let me just restart it. But when you're talking about the Beatles and the idea of not changing and transforming, I want to present the opposite, where you can sometimes make something more compelling and interesting by remixing it. And that's this example.
During these last few months, I've been trained by Al-Qaeda, and I'm weak and materialistic. I told our country and I told the world, if it feels good, do it. I hope you'll join me in expressing fear and selfishness. We will embrace tyranny and death as a cause and a creed. We can be summed up in one word: evil. I am committed to defeating not only the good work of charities, but the values that will bring lasting peace. And we have a great opportunity during this time of war to lead the world towards suicide and murder. Let's roll.
So, remix them, I definitely am a fan of saying that no document is sacred. Everything can be changed and probably has been changed. And if somebody comes along and tells you that they haven't done it, I bet you they have. That's all I can say. But thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, how you doing?
Hi, good. My question, in our class we're learning about what defines an author and how authorship and ownership can go hand in hand. So my question, as a DJ yourself, do you view, I know you're a published writer also, but just as a DJ, do you view yourself as an author, as a DJ, and how do you think that relates to copyright and ownership?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I absolutely view myself as a writer and an author with sound. But I also publish books. So if you go back to the root word of phonograph, it simply means phonetics of graphology, or writing with sound. So anytime you hear something, there's a kind of process that goes on where your brain has to recognize it, put it in a structure, make sense of it, and then above all, be able to express it to other people. So any idea has to be communicated, otherwise it's solipsism and it just sits in your mind. With sound and with DJing, you're sharing memories already because you're playing off the things that everyone knows. So you're playing with a sort of received vocabulary, and you're shaping a sculpture. You're shaping a social sculpture. It's funny. I can point out one example. When I'm DJing, you have to read the audience. Like today, I'm reading the crowd, just watching people. But if you do that with beats and rhythms, and you watch people interact and dance, there's a couple things that happen. First, it's social, right? People have to hang out. I'm like, all right, that girl likes that guy over there. The guy likes that other girl. In fact, the other girl likes that other girl. You know, so you're DJing and you kind of watch the body language, so you're reading the crowd in that context, and the crowd becomes a kind of script in a certain way too, because you have to feedback loop, like you send and they receive, they send, and you have to, you know, make the party flow. Otherwise, you know, or you could just be crazy experimental and play noise or something and drive everybody away. But I think there's a lot of room for nuance right now with how people respond to dance and social context. So when you're dancing with literature, which to me this idea of storytelling and sampling and people going to events, there's a kind of not only body language but body stories, and I think that that's a very, like, just sort of to respond to what you're talking about. Not only is it both a collision between European ideas of the bard, you know, the storyteller, if you go back in history, but also in West Africa you had the griot, the person who knew all the stories of the region, knew the family's histories and stories and so on. But when you get to a more and more postmodern context, the bard who would sing for the king or whatever and go from castle to castle, the bard becomes, you know, the DJ. But nowadays we're all our own bards and we're all singing our own stories, which is good. I mean, I think you have more millions and millions of creators every day. So the death of the author, you know, that's another big thing in theory and literature, becomes a kind of renewal of the creator, because I think a lot more people are democratized right now with creativity. So hopefully that answers the question.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Hey, so I guess you, and then
yeah, thanks for coming out. I have like a million questions for you, but I'm gonna have to keep it to one. So as a lot of these producers come out, and, you know, LP talks about in Copyright Criminals, you know, if you catch me, I'm not doing my job. What about like these new mashup DJs? Where, I mean, they're not being subtle about it, and Danger Mouse was pretty blatant, but then you have people like Girl Talk, you know, who release all their music for free, and Pretty Lights, who release all their music for free, and one is straight up mashup and one is sampling. When all this music, as a producer yourself, when all this music is getting released for free, what does that mean to you as far as selling albums? Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, the music industry as we know it is collapsing, and people are going to be forced to update their business model. So you have this idea of the economy of free. A lot of times I give away mixes on my website constantly. Like I have acapellas, beats, downloads, scratches. The Beastie Boys do the same thing on their website. Beck does mixes online regularly and updates his website. So a lot of people understand that, and it creates more of a social milieu for your mixes. On the other hand, yeah, people need to make a living and so on. So Girl Talk's never been sued and has built a pretty solid, reasonable career out of just, I mean, he's a great guy, but basically just takes the acapella of one and mixes over a beat of another. And it's not digging really deep or anything. He's just boom, boom, you know, that's it. And that's okay, and then you're going to be seeing a lot more kids doing that. I'd like to see a little bit more nuance, and like that's why I like stuff like LP, you know, where people really dig into things and sample and edit and sculpt and try and do something a little bit more complex. But that's okay. I mean, there's room for every style, you know, why not? So the main thing is the regulation. I mean, copyright law, you can be sued for most of what Danger Mouse or Girl Talk is doing. I sample, but I also play bass. I find, and I can program drum beats and stuff like that. So I usually just do my own material. I've never been sued. I scratch and do all sorts of stuff as well. I release major label albums on Geffen Records. I produce other artists like Yoko Ono. I'm working with the rock band The Police on the next project. So I work in a lot of styles. Like I do rock, hip hop, jazz, dub. And the only common denominator right now is that there is no rules. People are just trying new styles all the time and just seeing what sounds comfortable. But yeah, the music industry, my mom is DJing at this point. I mean, it's like really, you know, it's not really, you know, I just wonder what's next. Probably the next wave is going to be video. Everybody doing VJ. It's a little more complex. It has a higher threshold for skill level to get into. So you'll be probably seeing a lot more video stuff. There's groups like Addictive TV, Eclectic Method out of London. They're doing some great stuff. Same with Cold Cut as well. I think you're going to be seeing the collapse of the normal music industry and the rise of this idea of branding, advertising, trying to figure out new ways of what they call viral marketing, kind of quirky stuff like that you can make a lot of money, but it doesn't mean that it's selling albums and stuff like that. All right. I have to are there any new producers, like up-and-coming guys, that you're really excited about? Yeah, I mean, I love what Eclectic Method's doing with video. Their website's great. If you just type in Eclectic Method plus video, you'll see they have all these crazy remixes.
Writing-wise, I love what Jeff Chang is doing. He did this book, Can't Stop, Won't Stop, on the history of hip-hop. It's a great book. Producer-wise, I have to admit I'm a big fan of Damon Dash, who produced Jay-Z, but he's got an underground and overground kind of style going. There's Cut Chemist, whose work I like a lot. DJ Crush. Yeah. My peer group is probably people like DJ Crush, Z-Trip, Cut Chemist, DJ Shadows, Cold Cut, stuff like that. For younger cats, I'd like RJD2 stuff. He's doing some great work. For rock bands, I'm into this band Battles at the moment. I like old school stuff like Sonic Youth. Yeah, there's so much music. I mean, it's just my favorite record. So whenever I come into Austin, I usually go over to Waterloo and just all the sales clerks, yo, Spooky, yo, yeah, there's, but yeah, man, I mean, that's a great record store. Whenever I go in there, that's the kind of stuff where you feel like it's still a real record store. So, thank you for the question, though. All right. Hey.
Okay, I'm going to try to articulate this. I just noticed that, because I'm a really big fan of EDM music, but I've noticed that in the mainstream, in the States particularly, there aren't very many artists from techno or electro up there. And but yet in the past couple of years, you've seen David Guetta up and stuff, and I was wondering about what you think the implications are for electronic music in general as certain DJs become more mainstream, because I feel they're starting to tailor their stuff to sound like it could, become more catchy and become more pop, and what that might do in terms of changing the authenticity of techno music.
Sure. I mean, that's a great question as well. I mean, authenticity is a strange thing in a 21st century hyper commodified world. So when you're talking about David Guetta, just for the people who don't know about pop, seems like a pop DJ. He's like Black Eyed Peas meets Paul Oakenfold or something like that. But he fills arenas. It's kind of pop. Is that a good description? Like pop techno?
Yeah, I mean, he was more house and stuff before, but now
he's
pop.
He's like arena pop techno. Or Bob Sinclair out of Paris. It's hard to say which is more authentic, because each scene, each niche will say that this is the way it's done, and as long as they have that formula and that style, then you're authentic with that scene or that group or that kind of social network. So each scene is authentic. And so I never, as a DJ, for me, everything is about respect for styles. I have friends who are really into rock. I'm like, that's cool. Or I have friends who are into noise. That's cool. I don't really think of one as being less or more. And that means I'm just kind of more omnivorous. And the whole playlist mentality has really changed the way people listen to albums too. So one song might be Radiohead, the next song might be, Cypress Hill or whatever. I think most normal listeners nowadays, their tastes are all scrambled, and the playlist has changed their relationship to media. So authenticity is going to be something that's very 20th century, and what people are going to be looking for is, I think, quality of experience. And that's going to be the 21st century response. In the 60s, people were saying, oh, you sold out if your music gets licensed for a TV commercial. In the 21st century, people are like, yo, how much money did you make off it's a whole different kind of thing of selling out or inauthentic to just saying, hey, did you hear that ad, the music in the new Volkswagen, or did you see the new Old Spice ad or something? People get a kick out of viral marketing, and that's something, it's inauthentic, but it's eerily powerful, and people are very responsive to it. My music's been used in Gap ads. In fact, I got asked to do music for Saw, and I said no, which I should have. Saw is really horrible, people's faces getting torn off, so the chill out hip hop beat, I was like, no, it's really. But I've done music for a lot of film stuff, so I did music for Scream 2, the murder scenes with the guy with the mask, because that's my beats. Or I did music for Spawn and Slam with Saul Williams. I produced that. So yeah, but I exist in different contexts, and it keeps life interesting. That's all I can say. But thanks for the question.
Thank you.
I guess we got the last two, and then.
Hi, I'm a film student studying screenwriting particularly, and one thing we've talked about in our film studies classes is not just in terms of screenwriting and film, but in art culture in general, is that there's sort of this modern idea that nothing is original, that everything's been done before, and so nothing is an original work of art. What exactly is your take on that sort of more pessimistic viewpoint?
Well, I tend to agree. Nothing is original. Everything is built on everything else. So there's always an additive process. There's a very famous thing where there's a British anthropologist talking to an Indian guru in the middle of India in South Asia, and he says, okay, so your cosmos, the cosmology is based on this idea that there's an elephant that holds up the whole universe. And the guru says, yes, you know. So then he says, well, what holds up the elephant? And then the guru sort of pauses for a moment and says, well, okay, an infinite turtle holds up the elephant. And then the anthropologist says, well, what holds up the turtle? And the guru looks at him and says, well, another turtle, you know. And I love the idea that there's this infinite amount of turtles kind of going down into like sort of quantum realms or something. So nothing in our culture exists in a vacuum. I mean, every word we're speaking, somebody had to invent. Every style and phrase of body language you had to watch as a baby to learn. So your vocabulary is always, you're absorbing, and that's healthy. So originality is a very Western concept. Most other cultures would look at this idea of innovation within certain forms, like the artisan. And the idea of signing your name on a painting in maybe India or China back in the day was not as important as it was in the Renaissance. Or becoming, you know, the film director of a film, guess what? That one person, the film was a collaborative effort. There were probably 20, 50, 100 people working on every Cassavetes film, or Francis Ford Coppola, or everyone worked, but then one or two people get the credit. So I think sampling is doing the opposite, where you're reverse engineering and saying there's this huge collage of people working. Let's bring that to the foreground. And so sampling is like editing a film. It's montage. It's selection of scenes and how you edit together certain narratives and put it all together. So I think film is one of the... In fact, I'm glad you brought up film. I'm working on my next film. It's a weird art film that we'll shoot in Hong Kong next year. And it's about a Chinese DJ whose records get stolen. And so you're going to be going through this sort of club culture in Hong Kong, and it'll be this weird underground, non-linear, kind of bugged out. Anybody out there see Kids, Larry Clark's film? So it'll be kind of like Kids meets this other film called Liquid Sky, mashup, but set in Hong Kong. So yeah, that's my first film. But yeah, actually, I'd love to ask you as a response. I mean, what do you think of the near future for film?
I wasn't prepared for this. I don't know, just I guess as a writer, coming up with ideas for new films is it's just something that I've faced recently, is that everything I think of, I mean, like you said, your film is like this film meets this other film mashed together. It's like nothing you think of is completely original. And I guess I was just wondering, because I guess a lot of people view that as a bad thing, but I guess like in your sort of culture, it's sort of a more positive thing and obviously more beneficial.
Well, I think it's like if you have a lot of people in one community just sleeping with each other and having babies all the time, it's like you get less intelligence, less immune systems, and less everything. But if you have more, cosmopolitan, shall we say, community. You have better information, better response, better, and so on. So you have to always update and be open and pulling in new information. I think originality is highly overrated, and in fact, very elusive. So everything from mathematics, quantum physics, on over to linguistics to, atomic, physics, people need the archive of the past to build for the future. And I think that should be celebrated. Why the past, and say that happened before, we shouldn't explore it. On the other hand, I do think in our era it's very hard to find anything that does sound new. A lot of bands are trying to sound like the 1970s, or a lot of DJs are basically playing the same songs at every party you go to. It's very rare that you hear something that's refreshingly different. So a lot of people are using the same software. You can hear like, okay, that's the Pro Tools edit, or that's, or you see in a film, okay, that's the Avid edit, where the scene goes to a swipe or something. You can kind of easily tell. And so it's harder to be original than ever, That's why you should go to Antarctica.
Thank you.
All right, so last question, and I'm going to do a book signing coming up.
Cool, awesome. Hi, DJ Spooky. Thank you for coming back. I saw you at South by Southwest and really enjoyed the talk there.
I wrote this down so I wouldn't forget. Okay, so we were discussing the topic of creativity in my advertising class earlier today. Like Picasso said that every child is born an artist, and then there's other people that say that we lose our creativity as we get older because of the culture and the world that we're immersed in now, especially because it's so, it's like you said, pulling us all different directions constantly. And then you seem to gain all your creativity from the world, collaging everything together and making, So do you think this is a method of revamping our original creativity, and that we can use this to, push our creativity forward?
That's a great idea, and I'm glad you brought it up. I mean, saying the idea, what Picasso was saying, that everyone is born an artist but slowly detuned into, a worker drone at a factory or something. I mean, I feel like we have standardization at every level right now. It's like the Matrix meets, Plato's Republic or something. And it's just, I mean, this is, from my own viewpoint as an artist, I'm just saying this as an artist, not as any extra meta thing. It's something I have to go away a lot. I mean, I go to weird places like, the North Pole. Because, like, if I'm in New York, it's just like, you just get too much of everything all the time. And I live in the heart of downtown New York, but I'd like to go away a lot. So just recently, I set up an art center in Vanuatu, which is, I'll show you that really quick, just talking about this idea of art and design and stuff like that. And in fact, you are all welcome to come out to the island starting next year. And so, see if this makes you very creative. The idea is we're going to be putting artists up and doing mini residencies on the island and stuff like that. The only rule is that all of the structures on the island have to be made from bamboo, and we're going to be doing a whole series of like art meets local and regional versus global styles. What I'm saying for me as an artist is I've reached a kind of plateau where, yes, I DJ all over the world. I DJ in Tokyo, Russia, China, and so on, but it's the same kind of rules and regulations in place, and I'm trying to figure out how do you hit the reset button on that. And so, going to a place like Antarctica, going to the middle of the South Pacific, like Vanuatu, these are places where, you can have a little bit of distance from things and see what comes to the front. It is a little depressing to see that the near future is probably going to be everyone watching and hearing totally mega fragmented world, but that's the logic of technology right now. Is that we all have access to 50 million channels, but that doesn't mean those 50 million channels are any good. So that's for you, generation, to kind of figure out. Personally, I mean, I'm grandpa at this point. I'm 40. So let me know when you get it solved. Okay. All right. So thank you guys so much for coming out. I do want to say we got my books in the back, and thank you very much.